Day 5 continues. I want to talk about this function, combine. So take a look at the code here for a second. Read it. See if you can figure out the type. If you're following along in Emacs, see if you can check the type to see if it's what you think it is. Maybe write it down yourself just to be sure. And then I want to spend a minute just trying to puzzle out what it does. And I think it's really like an important skill to be able to look at a function and know what it does just by looking. So let's look at it and let's think about some corner cases and think about how this function behaves. So first things first, write down that type, pause the video if you need to. We'll see what it is in a moment. Okay, so what's the type of combine? Well, it says you give me types x and y, and then combine says give me a list of x's and a list of y's, and I'll give you a list of pairs of x's and y's. Okay, interesting. So between the name and the type, I guess it's taking two lists and returning a list of pairs. Okay, cool. How does that work? What do we think it does? Well, if you look at the match, it seems to process both lists in order. So when we have a cons for both of them, it takes the x off of the first list and the y off the second and returns the pair and then the recursive call. Okay, interesting. So let's try to predict what happens when I call this function. Write down your guess, see what you think it's going to be. Try to get the notation exactly right. It's okay if you don't get it right, but if you do get it right, that's a sign that you've really internalized the notations that we care about here. Okay, I'll run it. 1C, 2A, 3T. Nice. Okay. Now a question for you. What does this function do with lists of different lengths? See if you can figure that out just by looking at it without having to run it on an example. See if you can give it a good, clear name. What is the name of the behavior this function has when the lists have different lengths? Okay, let's run an example. 1, 2, 3, AT. You have to specify the function. 1A, 2T. What happened to 3? It's too bad. It's a shame. Sad to think about. 3 got dropped. The name I would have for this behavior is truncating. Now, will it only truncate the first list? Well, we can find that out. No. Here we lost the 3. Could it be looking at the types and only truncating the number one? No, that's crazy. It's nowhere in the code, and that's not a thing you're allowed to do in Coq anyway. You're not allowed to ask, hey, what type is this thing? It's not a question you can ask in code in Galena programs. So combine takes the shortest common bit. So whichever list is shorter, that's going to be the length of your final list. That's something we could prove, maybe will prove later on. And then it truncates. That's the word I would use. It's a truncating combine. Given two lists, it'll try to sort of zip them up like a zipper. Some languages even call this operation zip. It'll try to zip them up. But look, if you run out of zipper on one side, you got to stop. You got to drop all the other values. Think for a moment. Could you do something differently? What would you do if you had a cons here but nothing there? You would need to return some kind of pair that used X, but you don't know anything about Y. Y is a parameter, right? You don't get to choose what it is. So you're kind of out of luck. You can't just make one up. Now you could ask for a default or do something else like that, make it possible to return also a remnant list of X's and Y's. You could do other things if you were really worried about this truncating behavior. But as the function's written, you'll simply just drop the other bit on the floor. I want to also draw your attention to here. We've done this match here without parentheses, right? We've just written the comma. That's a thing you're allowed to do in match clauses, even without the pair type. Match supports looking at more than one thing at once. And then we've used underscores strategically to sort of capture both of the empty list cases at once. So if the first list is empty, this line will capture both the case where ly is empty and the case where ly has a cons. Because either way, we can't do anything. We have to return the empty list. And then this line similarly will capture the case where the second one is empty and the first one could be anything, except the first one already caught all the empty ones. So in this case, we know that lx has to be a cons. It can't be just a nil. Okay, in the full file, we have you building sort of the opposite. So we have some rhetorical questions to sort of stimulate you to answering these questions. And then we ask you to build a function split, which takes a list of pairs and returns a pair of lists. Okay. Cool. Just wanted to show you this interesting function. The rest of the videos that we'll be doing, that was that one. The rest of the videos that we'll be doing will be on a couple more functions and then on a case study. Okay. Talk to you soon.